The silence was the worst part. Commander Daniel Price sat in his chair and stared at the screens in front of him. Outside his small station, 60 alien ships moved into position around New Haven. The Krathiks had arrived 3 hours ago, and they kept coming. More and more ships appeared in the sky above the colony. New Haven was home to 14,000 people. They came here to farm and build a new life under 2 bright suns. The planet was beautiful with green fields and clear rivers. It was peaceful. Nobody expected a war to reach this far out into space. The colony had 4 small cannons for protection. That was all. Daniel had been in the military for 15 years before he retired to this quiet job. He knew what those 60 ships meant. The Krathiks were not known for showing mercy. When they conquered a world, they destroyed everything that resisted them. New Haven could not resist. Not really. Lieutenant Amy Carson sat at her station nearby. Her hands shook as she worked. She was only 23 years old. This was her first posting after training. She looked at Daniel with fear in her eyes. "Should we tell people to leave?" Amy asked. "Maybe some can escape." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Those ships control the sky now. Any shuttle we send up will be destroyed before it leaves the atmosphere. There is nowhere to run." Down on the planet's surface, Mayor Linda Hayes was helping people get to safety. Families crowded into shelters built under the main buildings. Parents held their children close. They spoke in whispers, trying to stay calm. But everyone knew what was happening above them. Linda had been mayor of New Haven for 7 years. She had helped build this colony from almost nothing. She watched it grow from a few hundred pioneers to a real community with schools and parks and hopes for the future. Now all of that might end. She walked to the communication building where Kevin Brooks worked. Kevin was young, barely 20 years old, but he was good with computers and radios. He would send their last message to anyone who might hear it. "Are you ready?" Linda asked him. Kevin nodded. His face was pale, but his jaw was set with determination. "I have the message prepared." "Should I send it now?" "Yes," Linda said quietly. "Send it now." Kevin's fingers moved across his keyboard. He typed the words that might be the last thing New Haven ever said to the rest of humanity. The message was simple and honest. It told their location. It explained that the Krathiks were attacking them. It said they had almost no defenses. It estimated they had less than 1 day before the bombardment would begin. The message ended with words that made Kevin's throat tight. "We do not expect rescue. We only ask that someone remember we were here. Tell Earth that New Haven stood until the end." He hit the send button. The message went out on every frequency, encoded with humanity's highest priority codes. It flew through space at the speed of light, calling out to anyone who might care. "Message sent," Kevin reported. Linda put her hand on his shoulder. "Good, now go to the shelters with everyone else." But Kevin stayed in his chair. Linda stayed too. They both knew that someone should be here watching and waiting. Even if there was nothing they could do. Up in orbit, Daniel powered up his 4 small cannons. They would not do much damage to ships as big as the ones surrounding them. But he would fire them anyway. He had to try. That was what soldiers did. They stood and fought even when they knew they could not win. "Amy," he said gently, "you should write to your family. Tell them whatever you need to tell them." Amy's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She pulled up her personal terminal and began typing. Daniel did the same. He wrote to his daughter Katie, who lived on Earth. He told her he loved her. He told her to be brave. He told her that sometimes you have to stand up even when you are afraid. The Krathik ships began to move into attack formation. Daniel watched them on his screens. They were precise and organized. They had done this many times before on many other worlds. To them, this was just another day of conquest. At exactly 6 in the evening, station time, the first Krathik ship fired its weapons. Bright beams of energy shot across space and hit Daniel's station. The shields lit up, absorbing the impact. The whole station shook. Alarms began to sound. Daniel fired back. His cannons spat out bolts of blue plasma. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. The 4th shot actually hit one of the alien ships and made its shields flicker for a moment. It was not much, but it was something. Then 12 Krathik ships fired at once. The shields around Daniel's station glowed brighter and brighter, trying to stop the incoming energy. They held for 3 minutes. Then they failed. "Hold on!" Daniel shouted. The station exploded around them. Walls blew apart. Systems caught fire. Amy was thrown from her chair and hit her head hard. She did not get up again. Daniel pulled himself back to his controls. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Half his screens were dark. The air was getting thin. He could feel the station dying around him. With shaking hands, he activated the emergency beacon one more time. It sent out a simple message that repeated over and over. "This is New Haven. We are still here. We are still fighting." Then Commander Daniel Price died at his post as the station broke apart in a ball of fire. On the surface, people felt the shockwave as pieces of the station fell from the sky. They knew what it meant. Their last defense was gone. Now there was nothing between them and the Krathix fleet except hope. The alien ships began firing on the planet. Huge weapons sent burning projectiles down from orbit. They hit the farmland first, destroying the fields that fed the colony. Then they hit the water systems. The Krathix were methodical. They would destroy everything that let people live here before they even touched the towns. In her shelter, Linda gathered the children around her. She told them stories about Earth. She described the oceans and forests. Many of the children had never seen Earth. They were born here on New Haven. She wanted them to think about something beautiful as the world shook around them. The bombardment came closer. The ground trembled with each impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. Someone started praying. Others joined in. The sound of voices rose up in the darkness. Kevin sat against the wall with his portable computer. He was still monitoring the communication channels. He did not expect to see anything. Earth was 67 light-years away. Even if they got the message, there was no way to send help in time. Physics did not allow it. Then his computer chimed. An incoming message. Kevin stared at the screen. His hands shook as he opened it. The words appeared. "New Haven. This is the Earth Defense Fleet. Hold on." "We're coming." Kevin could not breathe. It had to be a mistake. It was impossible. Earth was too far away. No ship could cross that distance fast enough to matter. Another message came through. "New Haven, acknowledge receipt. EDF Task Force Hammer is inbound to your location. Time to arrival, 4 hours. Keep your heads down. We're bringing friends." Kevin's voice cracked as he shouted. "Mayor Hayes! Mayor Hayes, you need to see this." Linda pushed through the crowd. She took the computer from Kevin's shaking hands and read the message once, twice, 3 times. "Is this real?" she whispered. "It's using our military codes," Kevin said. "The highest security encryption we have. I don't know how, but yes, it's real. Earth is coming." The shelter went completely silent. Then someone started crying. Someone else started laughing. The sound grew and spread until everyone was shouting and crying and holding each other. They had been preparing to die. They had accepted it. But now, impossibly, they had hope again. Earth had heard them. And Earth was coming. Admiral Jacob Kane stood on the bridge of his ship and watched impossible numbers scroll across his screens. His fleet was moving through subspace faster than any ship had ever moved before. The laws of physics said this should not be possible. But here they were, doing it anyway. The EDS Valiant was the largest warship humanity had ever built. She was 3 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Jacob had commanded her for only 6 weeks. This would be her first real battle. Around the Valiant flew 36 other ships. 4 massive dreadnoughts, including the Valiant. 23 cruisers, each 1 kilometer long and covered in guns. 10 destroyers, smaller and faster, built to protect the larger ships. Together, they made up the strongest fleet Earth had ever assembled. "Admiral, the hull is under a lot of stress," said Ryan Cooper, the chief engineer. "We're seeing small cracks in the outer plating. I don't know how much longer we can maintain this speed." "Will we make it to New Haven?" Jacob asked. "Probably. Maybe. I honestly don't know anymore, sir. We threw out every rule about subspace travel when we started this." Jacob allowed himself a small smile. "Then we're exactly where we need to be." The technology making this possible was brand new. Dr. Christine Ward had spent 20 years developing her theories about subspace manipulation. Other scientists had laughed at her. They said her ideas were impossible. Then the Krathix started conquering human colonies. And suddenly her impossible ideas became humanity's best hope. Her drive system, installed in every ship in the fleet, let them move at speeds that should have torn the ships apart. It was dangerous. It was experimental. But it worked. They had launched from Earth 16 hours ago. In that time, they had crossed more than 60 light-years. The Krathix could manage maybe 3 light-years per hour with their best ships. Humanity was moving at almost 17. "All ships prepare to exit subspace," Jacob ordered. Power up weapons and shields the moment we enter normal space. We're going in hot. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained together for only 3 weeks before New Haven's distress call came. 3 weeks to learn how to fight as a unit. It would have to be enough. Lieutenant Chris Park worked the navigation controls. Exit in 30 seconds, Admiral. Jacob opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. In 30 seconds, we're going to appear in the middle of a hostile fleet. The Krathiks outnumber us about 2 to 1. They've had hours to prepare their positions. They have every advantage except one. They've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. Show them. Kane out. Exit in 10 seconds, Chris announced. Jacob gripped the arms of his command chair. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy in a way no one could ignore. The Krathiks thought humans were weak. They thought New Haven would be an easy target. They were about to learn differently. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the stars appeared. For just a moment, reality shifted and settled. Then the tactical screens lit up with enemy contacts. 64 Krathic ships. Right there. Right in front of them. All positioned around New Haven like predators circling wounded prey. All weapons fire, Jacob roared. The Valiant's main guns fired first. 8 massive railguns shot tungsten rounds at incredible speeds. The rounds crossed the distance to the nearest Krathik's battleship in less than a second. The alien ship's shields absorbed the first 3 hits. The 4th round punched through. The 5th and 6th followed, tearing deep into the enemy ship. Something exploded inside. The Krathik's battleship broke in half, its reactor going critical in a flash of white light. First kill confirmed, someone shouted on the bridge. But there was no time to celebrate. The Krathiks were recovering from their surprise. 63 ships turned to face the human fleet. Weapons began firing from both sides. Space lit up with the colors of death. Captain Greg Stone commanded the cruiser EDS Savage. He led his 3-ship squadron against a group of enemy destroyers. Target their engines. Don't waste ammunition on their shields. His ships fired missiles, hundreds of them. The missiles adjusted their course as they flew, seeking the weakest points in the enemy defenses. Several Krathik's destroyers exploded in balls of fire. But the aliens were fighting back hard. A Krathik's cruiser locked onto the human destroyer EDS Swift. It fired everything it had. The Swift's shields failed. A plasma bolt hit her engine section. The destroyer went dark and began drifting. Swift is disabled, the tactical officer reported. She's venting atmosphere. Send rescue shuttles, Jacob ordered, and mark that Krathik's cruiser as a priority target. The Dreadnought EDS Defiant turned her massive guns on the enemy cruiser. One shot was all it took. The Krathik ship simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of debris. The battle spread across New Haven's orbit. Ships maneuvered and fired at ranges where every shot mattered. The Krathiks had numbers and experience. The humans had desperation and weapons that hit harder than anything the aliens had seen before. Lieutenant Sarah Bennett flew her fighter through the chaos. She was one of 12 pilots from the carrier EDS Fortress. Her small ship weaved between the massive warships at speeds that would have killed her without her flight suit. Blue Squadron, form up on me, she called. We're taking down that battleship. The 12 fighters dove toward the remaining Krathik's battleship. They released their weapons at the same time. 12 antimatter torpedoes, each carrying enough power to level a city. The Krathiks shot down 7 torpedoes with their defensive guns. 5 got through. The battleship's shields held for maybe a microsecond. Then matter met antimatter. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. Splash 1 battleship, Sarah shouted. How do you like that? On the surface of New Haven, the colonists could hear the battle overhead. Flashes of light illuminated the night sky. Ships were dying up there. People were dying, but they were fighting for New Haven, fighting for them. Kevin Brooks broadcast updates from his computer. They're fighting for us. Earth is fighting for us. Mayor Linda Hayes held her granddaughter close. We're not alone, she whispered. We were never alone. The battle had been raging for 20 minutes. Both sides had taken losses. The void was full of debris and bodies, but slowly the humans were winning. The Krathiks had never fought an enemy that could match their firepower. They had grown comfortable through centuries of easy conquests. Now they were paying the price. Admiral Jacob Kane watched another Krathik's cruiser break apart under fire from the Savage. All ships maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup. The Krathik's commander, War leader Zethix watched his fleet dissolve around him. He had conquered 17 worlds in his career. He had commanded hundreds of ships, but he had never seen anything like this. How are their weapons penetrating our shields? He demanded. They're using kinetic weapons at extreme velocities, his tactical officer reported, and their energy weapons operate at frequencies our shields weren't designed to stop. Zethix studied his tactical display. He had started with 64 ships. Now he was down to 42. The humans had only lost 6. Signal the fleet, Zethix ordered. Fall back to defensive formation. We need time to analyze their tactics. But Admiral Kane saw the Krathiks trying to regroup. They're trying to reorganize. Don't let them. All ships, aggressive pursuit. The Valiant surged forward. Her gun spoke again and again. 3 more Krathiks cruisers died under her fire. Captain Greg Stone, commanding the Savage, saw the Krathiks flagship trying to escape. Admiral, their command ship is attempting to jump to subspace. Negative, Savage, Jacob started to say. Don't risk your ship. With respect, sir, these bastards tried to destroy a civilian colony, Greg interrupted. They don't get to run away. I'm going after them. The Savage accelerated hard, her engines burning bright. Greg stood on his bridge watching the distance close. All weapons, prepare to fire everything we have. His crew responded perfectly. Every gun, every missile, every weapon on the Savage locked onto the fleeing Krathiks flagship. Fire! The Savage unleashed everything. Missiles streaked through space. Railgun rounds followed. Energy weapons painted lines of light across the darkness. The Krathiks flagship's shields lit up, struggling to absorb the incoming fire. They flickered. They failed. Missiles struck the hull. A railgun round pierced the drive section. The flagship tumbled, its escape attempt aborted. Target disabled, Greg reported. She's not going anywhere. The battle was entering its final phase. The Krathiks fleet was scattered and desperate. Individual ships tried to flee or surrender, but the humans showed no mercy. War leader Zethix sat aboard his crippled flagship and watched his fleet die. Of his original 64 ships, fewer than 15 remained combat-capable. The humans had lost only 6 vessels. It was a catastrophic defeat. War leader, his communications officer, said quietly. The humans are hailing us. Admiral Jacob Kane's face appeared on the display. His expression was hard. Krathiks vessels, this is Admiral Kane of the Earth Defense Fleet. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that tries to flee or fight will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. Zethix looked at the human admiral. There was steel in those eyes. The Krathiks had expected humans to be weak. They had been very, very wrong. I am War Leader Zethix of the Krathiks Imperial Fleet, he responded. The first shuttle from the Valiant landed in Riverside 3 hours after the battle ended. The landing pad was damaged from the Krathiks bombardment, covered in craters and scorched metal. But the pilot brought the shuttle down safely anyway. Admiral Jacob Kane stepped out first. He wore his dress uniform because this moment deserved respect and formality. Behind him came security personnel and medical teams carrying supplies. Mayor Linda Hayes waited for him. She looked exhausted. Her clothes were covered in dust. Her face showed the strain of thinking her people were going to die. But she was standing. Her eyes were clear and strong. Jacob saluted her. Mayor Hayes, I'm Admiral Jacob Kane of the Earth Defense Fleet. I apologize for the delayed arrival. Linda laughed, a sound that was half crying and half genuine amusement. Admiral, you crossed 67 light years in 4 hours. I'd say your timing was perfect. She held out her hand. Jacob shook it firmly. How are your people? Alive, thanks to you, Linda replied. We have wounded from the bombardment, but it would have been so much worse if you hadn't arrived. The Krathiks were just getting started. Jacob's expression turned hard. We saw the damage from orbit. My medical teams are ready to help. We brought supplies, food, water, and construction equipment. We'll help you rebuild. Kevin Brooks, the young technician, stepped forward. Why did Earth come? We're just one colony. 14,000 people at the edge of nowhere. It doesn't make sense. Jacob turned to face Kevin. His voice was strong and clear, carrying across the landing pad so everyone could hear. It makes perfect sense. You're human. That's all that matters. When you're in trouble, we come. That's what being part of humanity means. Nobody gets left behind. Nobody gets forgotten, ever. He paused, then continued. Earth heard your message. Every word. And we decided that if the Krathiks thought they could attack our people without consequences, They needed to learn otherwise. Consider this the first lesson. Linda nodded slowly. What happens now? The Krathiks won't accept this defeat easily. Their empire covers dozens of worlds. Let them come, Jacob said simply. We're not the species they think we are. They've been conquering for centuries, facing enemies who couldn't match them. But we're humans. We adapt, we innovate, and we don't quit. He pointed up at the sky where the Earth Defense Fleet maintained orbit. Those ships represent 3 months of work. 3 months ago, we didn't have the technology to cross space this fast. Dr. Christine Ward made it possible. Because when humans are threatened, we find solutions. Kevin looked up at the stars. Are more ships coming? 53 ships are already on their way from Earth, Jacob confirmed. Another 100 are being built. We're constructing shipyards at Mars, Luna, and Europa. In 6 months, Earth will have the largest battle fleet in known space. In a year, we'll have the most advanced. The Krathiks wanted a war. They're going to get one. A medic approached Jacob. Admiral, we've completed initial triage. We have 73 wounded who need immediate evacuation to the Valiant's medical bay. Another 200 can be treated here on the surface. Get the critical cases aboard now, Jacob ordered. Set up field hospitals here and in the other settlements. I want every colonist examined by a doctor within 12 hours. As the medics moved away, Jacob turned back to Linda. Mayor, I need to ask about the defense station commander. Daniel Price, did he? Linda's expression became sad. He died defending us. He and his crew bought us time. They never stopped fighting even when they knew they couldn't win. Jacob nodded, his jaw tight. He'll be remembered. All of them will. Earth doesn't forget her heroes. Over the next hours, the Earth Defense Fleet worked to secure New Haven and begin relief operations. Shuttles flew between the surface and the ships in orbit, carrying supplies down and wounded up. Engineering teams assessed damage to buildings and infrastructure. Medical personnel treated injuries and comforted people still traumatized by the attack. Captain Greg Stone supervised the installation of orbital defense platforms. If the Krathiks try to come back, they'll find New Haven much harder to threaten. We're putting up shield generators, sensor arrays, and enough weapons to hold off a fleet until help can arrive. On the Valiant, Dr. Christine Ward examined the captured Krathiks ships. She walked through the corridors of War Leader Zethix's flagship, her tablet recording every detail. Their subspace drives are elegant but limited, she said to her assistant, Lieutenant Paul Green. They achieve stability by sacrificing speed. Our drives are more volatile but much faster. I think we can combine the best features of both designs. Doctor, aren't the Krathiks our enemies? Paul asked. Christine smiled slightly. Science doesn't take sides, Lieutenant. Good ideas should be shared and improved. Besides, understanding their technology helps us fight them better if we need to. In his quarters aboard the Valiant, Admiral Jacob Kane wrote a message to Earth. He needed to report on the battle and casualties, but first he wanted to share something else. To the citizens of Earth, he wrote, Today, the men and women of the Earth Defense Fleet engaged the Krathiks Imperial Fleet at New Haven. We were outnumbered 2-1. We were fighting far from home with no reinforcements. But we had something the Krathiks didn't. We were fighting for our people. I'm proud to report that New Haven is secure. The Krathiks fleet has been neutralized. 14,000 colonists who thought they had been forgotten now know that Earth keeps its promises. To any human on any world who wonders if Earth cares, we do. Distance doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. If you're human, you're ours, and we will move heaven and earth to protect you. The Krathiks learned this today. Let anyone else who threatens humanity take note. He signed the message and sent it. Then he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. On the surface, Mayor Linda Hayes stood in the ruins of Riverside's main square and looked up at the night sky. Ships moved among the stars, human ships, their lights visible even from the ground. She thought of Commander Daniel Price and his crew who had died believing no help would come. You weren't alone, she whispered to them. None of us were. Earth came. In that moment, standing among destruction but surrounded by hope, Linda understood something fundamental about humanity. They were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space exploration. They had made mistakes. They had faced setbacks. But they had one quality that set them apart. They absolutely refused to abandon their own. That refusal had brought 37 warships across 67 light-years in 4 hours. It had turned an impossible rescue into a legendary victory. And it had announced to the entire galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Krathix Empire had stood for thousands of years. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They believed themselves invincible. Today, that belief had died along with half their fleet at New Haven. News of the battle spread across the galaxy through 100 different channels. Other civilizations learned that humanity, the young species most had dismissed as insignificant, had just handed the Krathix Empire its worst defeat in living memory. Reactions varied. Some species saw opportunity, wondering if the weakened Krathix could be exploited. Others saw warning, recognizing that humanity's military capabilities had been badly underestimated. A few saw hope, wondering if this new power might protect others from Krathix expansion. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. When news of the victory arrived, people flooded into the streets. The fleet that many had feared would be destroyed had instead become humanity's salvation. Dr. Christine Ward was hailed as a hero. Her experimental drives were now proven beyond doubt. But in the halls of Earth's government, the mood was more serious. President Nancy Walsh addressed the assembled representatives from humanity's colonies and stations. "We've won a battle," she said. "But make no mistake, we are now at war. The Krathix will not accept this defeat lightly. They will come for us with everything they have. We must be ready." "We need allies," suggested Ambassador Henry Cole. "The Vren Collective, the Tau Coalition, the Meridian Assembly. If we can build a coalition against the Krathix—" "No," Jacob Kane interrupted. He had returned to Earth for this emergency session. "We don't need allies. We need to be strong enough that the Krathix won't dare attack us again. Alliances can break. Our own strength cannot." "You advocate isolationism?" Ambassador Cole asked. "I advocate pragmatism," Jacob replied. "For 300 years, humanity has tried to fit into galactic civilization. We've followed their rules and tried to be good neighbors. And what happened? The Krathix still tried to conquer our colony. The other species stood by and watched." He leaned forward. "I'm not saying we should be hostile. I'm saying we should be independent. We build our fleet. We defend our people. We make it clear that humanity stands alone and stands strong. If others want friendship, wonderful. But we don't need them to survive." President Walsh nodded. "The Admiral makes a good point. We've proven we can defend ourselves. Now we prove we can sustain it." She paused. "I'm authorizing a massive expansion of our military, shipyards, training facilities, research stations, everything needed to build and maintain a fleet that can protect human space. The cost will be enormous," warned Finance Minister Scott Baker. "The cost of losing would be higher," Walsh replied. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Haven, war leader Zethix stood before the Grand Council of the Krathix Empire. His hands were bound in ceremonial chains, a symbol of his failure. Around him, 7 council members watched with expressions ranging from anger to cold calculation. "You lost 39 ships to an inferior force," High Counselor Vraxis stated. His voice carried the weight of authority and disapproval. "You allowed a newly established human colony to survive when you had overwhelming advantage. Explain yourself." Zethix raised his head, refusing to show weakness even in defeat. "The humans were not inferior. Their weapons technology exceeds ours. Their tactics are innovative and aggressive, and their willingness to accept casualties to achieve victory is beyond anything we have encountered." "Excuses," Vraxis hissed. "You faced primitives who have barely explored beyond their home system. They crossed 67 light-years in 4 hours," Zethix replied flatly. "Our best ships require 17 hours to cover the same distance. They are not primitives, High Counselor. They are the most dangerous enemy the Empire has faced in 3 centuries. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Counselor Thrain spoke, her voice more thoughtful than angry. "What are you suggesting, War Leader?" "I suggest the Empire reconsider its expansion into human space," Zethix said carefully. The conquest of New Haven was meant to be simple. Instead, it became a catastrophic defeat that cost us ships, warriors, and prestige. If humans can respond this quickly to one threatened colony, imagine what they will do if we attack their core worlds. "You suggest we surrender to fear?" Vraxis demanded. "I suggest we respect capability," Zethix countered. "Humans have something we have not encountered before, a willingness to sacrifice everything to protect their own. They will not negotiate. They will not retreat. They will fight until they win or until they die. And based on what I witnessed, they are very good at winning." The council debated for hours. Zethix was eventually dismissed, still in chains, while they discussed his fate and the fate of their war with humanity. Meanwhile, across human space, change was happening at incredible speed. New Haven was being rebuilt with help from Earth. Construction crews worked day and night to repair damaged buildings and restore infrastructure. But more importantly, New Haven was being fortified. It would never again be vulnerable to attack. Kevin Brooks stood in the new communications center, much larger than the old one. Banks of computers monitored sensor arrays that now covered the entire star system. If anything tries to sneak up on us again, we'll see them coming from light years away, he explained to a group of visiting officers from Earth. Mayor Linda Hayes oversaw the expansion of Riverside. The town was growing as new colonists arrived from Earth, drawn by New Haven's newfound fame. "We're not just rebuilding," she told a reporter. "We're building something stronger, something that can't be broken." On Earth, the military expansion President Walsh had authorized was transforming human civilization. Shipyards orbited every major world and moon in the solar system. Construction of new warships proceeded at a pace that shocked even the engineers managing the projects. Dr. Christine Ward led a team of scientists working on improvements to the subspace drive. "We can go faster," she insisted to her colleagues. "The current drives work, but they're the first generation. We can refine them, make them more stable, more efficient." Her team analyzed data from the captured Krathix ships, looking for insights that could be applied to human technology. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Every breakthrough brought humanity one step closer to true dominance in space. Admiral Jacob Kane commanded the expanded fleet from the new flagship EDS Endeavour, even larger than the Valiant. He drilled his growing number of ships relentlessly, preparing them for the war he knew was coming. "The Krathix will test us," he told his captains during a strategy meeting. "They'll probe our defenses looking for weakness. We can't give them any." And test them the Krathix did. 3 times over the following months, small Krathix raiding forces appeared at the edges of human space. Each time they were met by human warships and driven off with heavy losses. The third raid targeted a mining colony on the planet Westreach. A dozen Krathix destroyers jumped into the system, expecting light resistance. Instead, they found 20 human warships waiting for them. Captain Helen Morris commanded the defense force. "All ships weapons-free. Show them they're not welcome here." The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. All 12 Krathix ships were destroyed or captured. Not a single human vessel was lost. After the third failed raid, something unprecedented happened. War leader Zethix, restored to command after his honest assessment proved accurate, requested a meeting with Admiral Jacob Kane. The two commanders met aboard a neutral station. Guards from both sides watched carefully, hands near weapons, ready for treachery. But none came. "Admiral Kane," Zethix began, his translator rendering his words into perfect English. "I come with a proposal from the Krathix High Council. We wish to negotiate a border agreement with humanity." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "The mighty Krathix Empire wants to negotiate?" "The practical Krathix Empire wishes to avoid a costly war," Zethix corrected. "We acknowledge that humanity is not the easy prey we assumed. Your species has proven resourceful, technologically innovative, and disturbingly difficult to intimidate. I'll take that as a compliment." "It is meant as fact," Zethix replied. "The Council has analyzed the situation. Conquest of human space would require resources better spent elsewhere. We propose formal recognition of current borders, non-aggression pacts, and establishment of trade relations." Jacob studied the alien commander carefully. "You came to New Haven with 64 ships to destroy a civilian colony. Now you want to be friends?" "I came to New Haven expecting easy victory over primitives," Zethix said. "I was wrong. The Council was wrong. We have adjusted our assessment." "That is not weakness, Admiral. That is wisdom. And if I say no," Zethix's mandibles made a gesture that might have been a smile, "then humanity and the Krathix will continue to fight. Many will die on both sides. Resources will be wasted. In the end, neither will gain anything of value. Is that preferable to peace?" Jacob was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "I'll take your proposal to Earth. But understand this. Any agreement must include protections for all species threatened by the Krathix. We're not interested in just saving ourselves. If you want peace with humanity, you stop expanding through conquest entirely. That is a significant demand." That's the price, Jacob said flatly. Take it or leave it. Zethix regarded the human with something like respect. You are either very brave or very foolish. I'm neither, Jacob replied. I'm just human, and we've decided the galaxy would be better if empires like yours learned to behave. The negotiations that followed took months. Both sides argued over details. Treaties were drafted, rejected, and revised. But slowly an agreement took shape. The Krathix Empire, for the first time in its history, agreed to halt expansion and recognize the sovereignty of neighboring civilizations. It was not perfect peace. Many on both sides remained skeptical, but it was a start. Other species watched these negotiations with great interest. The Vren Collective sent diplomats to Earth, seeking their own agreements. The Tau Coalition opened trade discussions. Even the reclusive Meridian Assembly reached out with messages of respect. Humanity had changed the balance of power in the galaxy simply by refusing to be victims. On New Haven, life continued to improve. The farms were productive again. New buildings rose where old ones had been destroyed. Children played in parks, their laughter a testament to survival and hope. In the rebuilt town square, workers finished construction of a monument. It was a simple obelisk of local stone with names carved into its surface. Commander Daniel Price, Lieutenant Amy Carson, all the others who died defending their home. At the top of the monument, visible from anywhere in town, were words that had become New Haven's motto. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. Kevin Brooks stood before the monument with Mayor Linda Hayes. Do you think they knew? He asked quietly. Commander Price and the others. Do you think they knew Earth would come? Linda considered the question. I think they hoped. Hope is what made them keep fighting when logic said to give up, and their hope was proven right. She put her hand on the stone, feeling the carved letters under her fingers. They bought us time. That's all any of us can do sometimes. Buy time and hope it's enough. It was enough, Kevin said. Earth came, Linda agreed. And the galaxy will never forget it. News of the treaty between humanity and the Krathix spread quickly. Some saw it as humanity surrendering. Others saw it as the Krathix surrendering. The truth was more complex than either view. Both sides had learned respect for each other through conflict. Both recognized that continued war would be costly and ultimately pointless. And both understood that the galaxy was large enough for multiple powers to coexist. But the treaty had another effect that neither side had fully anticipated. It made humanity a major power in galactic politics virtually overnight. Species that had ignored human diplomats for decades suddenly wanted to talk. Trade agreements were signed. Technology exchanges were proposed. Humanity found itself with influence that normally took centuries. 5 years had passed since the Battle of New Haven. Admiral Jacob Kane returned to the colony for a ceremony, and he was amazed by what he saw. The town of Riverside had been rebuilt larger and more beautiful than before. The farmland stretched green and healthy under the twin suns. New buildings stood where old ones had been destroyed. The colony had not just survived. It had thrived. Mayor Linda Hayes, older now with silver in her hair, greeted Jacob at the landing pad. Welcome back, Admiral. We've been expecting you. I wouldn't miss this for anything, Jacob replied, shaking her hand warmly. They walked together toward the town square where thousands of people had gathered. Colonists from New Haven stood alongside officers from the defense fleet and representatives from dozens of other worlds. They had all come to remember and to celebrate. The monument in the center of the square had weathered 5 years of New Haven's climate. The names carved into stone remained clear and sharp. Commander Daniel Price, Lieutenant Amy Carson, all the others who had died buying time for their people. Jacob stood before the monument and looked out at the crowd. He saw faces young and old, human and alien. The galaxy had changed in 5 years, and New Haven had been the catalyst for that change. 5 years ago, Jacob began, his voice carrying across the square. This colony faced annihilation. The Krathix came with overwhelming force, expecting easy victory. They were wrong. He gestured to the crowd. They were wrong because they didn't understand humanity. They saw a small colony far from home and thought it would be defenseless. They didn't realize that every human colony, no matter how small or distant, is part of something larger, part of humanity itself. Commander Price and his crew understood that. They fought knowing they couldn't win, but they fought anyway, because that's what humans do. We stand, we resist. We buy time for help to arrive. And we trust that help will come. Jacob's voice grew stronger, and it did come. It came in 37 ships that crossed an impossible distance. It came in the form of 15,000 sailors and Marines who risked everything for people they'd never met. It came because that's who we are. He turned to face the crowd directly. The galaxy learned something 5 years ago. It learned that humanity doesn't abandon its own. It learned that we'll cross any distance, overcome any obstacle, and face any enemy to protect our people. And it learned that threatening us comes with consequences. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Jacob waited for quiet before continuing. Today we dedicate this monument not just to those who died, but to the principle they died defending. No human stands alone. Whether you're on Earth or on the frontier, whether you're in a city of millions or an outpost of dozens, you are part of humanity, and humanity never forgets its own. He saluted the monument. Every officer present snapped to attention and saluted as well. In the silence that followed, Kevin Brooks activated the transmitter that would carry this ceremony across human space. Kevin was older too, no longer the scared young technician who had sent that desperate message 5 years ago. He was now chief of New Haven's Communications Center, a facility that monitored the entire sector. From New Haven, Kevin broadcast, to every human colony, station, and ship, remember why we're here, remember what we stand for, and remember that no matter how dark things seem, no matter how impossible the odds, Earth will come, humanity will come, because that's what we do. As the ceremony continued, Jacob found himself reflecting on how much had changed. The Earth Defense Fleet now numbered over 400 ships, making it one of the largest military forces in known space. Human colonies dotted dozens of star systems. Trade agreements connected humanity with species across the galaxy. But more important than numbers or treaties was the change in how others saw humanity. No longer were humans dismissed as newcomers or primitives. They were respected, sometimes feared, always taken seriously. The Krathix Empire had honored their treaty. There had been no more attacks on human worlds. Zethix, promoted to High Commander, had become an unlikely ally, working with human forces to maintain peace in border regions. Other species had taken note. The Vren Collective, once hostile, now sought human partnership. The Tau Coalition traded technology freely with human scientists. Even the mysterious Meridian Assembly had opened diplomatic channels. All of this traced back to one moment, one decision, one promise kept. After the ceremony, Jacob walked through Riverside with Linda. The town was bustling with activity. Children played in the streets. Shops sold goods from a dozen different worlds. Life had returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. "How are your people?" Jacob asked. "Strong," Linda replied. "That day changed us. We learned we could survive the worst and come back stronger. It's a powerful lesson." They passed the communication center where Kevin worked. Through the windows, they could see him at his station, monitoring the systems that now protected New Haven and the entire sector. "He never left," Linda said, noticing Jacob's gaze. "After the battle, I thought he might want to go to Earth, join the fleet, see the galaxy. But he said his place was here." "This is his home," Jacob nodded, understanding. A lot of people want to be where the action is. But it takes a special kind of courage to stay and build rather than leave and fight. They continued to the edge of town where construction crews were expanding Riverside. New homes were being built for the continuing influx of colonists. New Haven's population had tripled in 5 years. "We're not unique anymore," Linda observed. "Dozens of colonies have been established in the past 5 years. Humanity is spreading fast." "That's good," Jacob said. "The more spread out we are, the harder we are to threaten. And every colony knows that if trouble comes, help will arrive." "Will it always?" Linda asked quietly. "Can you promise that Earth will always respond the way it did for us?" Jacob was silent for a moment, considering the question honestly. "I can't promise it will always be as dramatic, but I can promise we'll never stop trying. That's what New Haven taught us. The cost of abandoning our own is too high, not in resources or ships, but in what it means to be human." They reached a viewpoint overlooking the valley where New Haven's farms spread out in neat rows. The land that had been scorched by Krathix bombardment was now productive again, feeding not just the colony, but exporting food to other worlds. "Do you ever think about Commander Price?" Linda asked. "About what he would think if he could see this?" "Often," Jacob admitted. "I think he'd be proud. He and his crew bought you time, and you used that time to build something lasting. That's the best monument they could have. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they heard the sound of children singing. A school group was practicing for an upcoming performance, their young voices carrying across the town. The song was new, written by a local teacher, but it had spread to other colonies. It was called Earth Came, and it told the story of New Haven's darkest day and brightest triumph. Linda smiled as she listened. They're teaching it in schools across human space now. Our story has become legend. Good, Jacob said. Every generation should know what their ancestors were willing to do for them. And every generation should know what their descendants might be called to do for others. Night fell on New Haven. The stars came out, brilliant and clear in the colony's clean atmosphere. Among those stars, ships moved on patrol routes, watching and protecting. Human ships, always vigilant, always ready. In orbit, the defense platforms that Captain Greg Stone had installed 5 years ago had been upgraded and expanded. New Haven was now one of the most heavily defended colonies in human space, not because it was the most important or the largest, but because it was symbolic. This was where humanity had drawn the line. This was where they had said no more. This was where the galaxy learned that humans protected their own. Jacob prepared to return to his ship. Linda walked him back to the landing pad where his shuttle waited. Before he boarded, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for coming 5 years ago, but for coming back now. For remembering us." "We could never forget," Jacob replied. "New Haven is part of who we are now, part of our identity as a species." He boarded the shuttle and lifted off, rising into the night sky. From his window, he could see the lights of Riverside spreading below, a testament to human resilience and determination. Across human space, similar lights glowed on dozens of worlds. Each colony was unique, each had its own story, but they all shared one common truth: they were not alone. On Earth, President Nancy Walsh addressed a gathering of diplomats from across the galaxy. 5 years into her expanded military program, humanity had become a force that could not be ignored. "We did not seek to become a major power," she told the assembled representatives. "We sought only to protect our own. But in doing so, we demonstrated that humanity will not be pushed around. We demonstrated that we have the will and the capability to defend ourselves." She paused, looking at the faces before her, human and alien alike. "Some of you feared this. Some of you wondered what humanity would do with this power. I'll tell you what we're doing. We're using it to ensure that no human ever again has to wonder if help will come. We're using it to build a galaxy where strength protects rather than oppresses."